Spiritual guidance comes in many forms through prayers, religious texts, and leaders, but it's not always accessible to young people looking for guidance, and sometimes it's even dismissed. But the frenzied pace of our high-tech world and our attachments to our phones and the latest social media post may be changing that. It may illustrate that more than ever we have a need for real connections with people and for some with a higher power. Joining me to talk about all of that is Rabbi Noga Brenner-Samia from Binah, the Jewish Movement for Social Change, and Rabbi Yitzhak Marmerstein from the Rav Kook Institute, Jerusalem. Always great to have you two with me on the show. Thanks, Noga, I want to start with you because I think today some might wonder, are people even looking for spiritual leaders in this age? I mean, you can look up anything on Google, you can watch YouTube videos, we have so much access now to technology and knowledge, but that's not the same thing as actually a person or teachings with somebody, which is part of the Jewish tradition.
Right, and I think it's really hard to generalize because secular people are sovereign selves and they look often to themselves as a source of authority. And so it's always a challenge and kind of an interesting to grapple with the concept of spiritual leadership in the secular community. And I think you're right, people don't anymore, not as much turn to a single authoritative figure, but rather it's dispersed. You might turn to a thought leader on some issue, you might turn to a poet or an author or a therapist or a psychologist, and potentially to a teacher and to some other kinds of role models. So I think we do tend to seek out guidance, certainly. We all need guidance at different stages of our lives, but not necessarily from one authoritative, charismatic leader that will give us the answers to all the aspects of our lives.
Right, which is the way it kind of used to be.
Yeah.
Rabbi Marmerstein, Rav Kook, though, of course, I'm making a safe assumption here, he would probably say the ultimate spiritual guide for us is God.
Yes, and he would say the way to access that is very much in line with what you're saying, that each one of us has a godly soul, and the path is to get in touch with our godly soul, not to demonstrate conformity to an external system. I mean, the system is a spiritual practice, but the spiritual practice is in order to enhance the soul's growth and development, and he had very clear guidance as to how to access our inner truth, our inner being, and our responsibility in life is to live in harmony with our true inner self.
And give us one example of how we would access that Rav Kook says.
For example, in one place he says that look at the lights in the world in their inwardness. Don't let the names, the words, the idioms confine your soul. Their language is under our control. We're not under theirs. So it's not to get caught in concepts, but to really be willing to meet the reality that you're in as God's presence in your life, for example.
Right, and Noga, at your institution, what are some of the ways that people today in Israel are kind of trying to find that connection?
Yeah, I think people are looking, they are looking for an elevation of spirit, and they're looking for inspiration. I think at Binah, the secular yeshiva where I teach, so we're very intent on cultivating kind of the next generation of leaders, right? We might not call them rabbis, although some of us tend to call ourselves rabbis, or teachers, but we look to be an inspiration for our students in the realm of Jewish learning, of how to celebrate, how to have a meaningful, purposeful Jewish life, holidays, Shabbat, how to be inspired to take action in the world and to make the world a better place. Those are the kinds of leaders I think that we're looking for, less about intervention in our private lives and much more about inspiration in our communal lives.
About maybe fixing the world.
It's very much about fixing the world, but the path to fixing the world is fixing ourselves, and also each one of us being truly who we are and offering that to the collective work of fixing the world. Each one has to bring our best, most idealistic, most spirit-filled. But the purpose of spirit is to live matter more fully, as it were. So
Right.
it's really the fusion, and the goal is to perfect the world. That's for sure.
And there's always this tension I find, in Jewish life, but also in other religious streams, between inspiration, contemplation, prayer, and action. Mm-hmm. In Jewish life, we have a lot of emphasis on the steps forward to actualize, our spirituality. And I think in that sense, people still need models who are taking those kind of steps in the world.
I think a big part of the challenge is actually, especially for secular Israelis, is for them to even seek that kind of spirituality within Judaism. So many are either turned off or don't associate spirituality with Judaism, that they seek it elsewhere, either outside Judaism, outside religion, or in other religions. And I think really the ability to present Jewish life as something, as I said, inspirational, spiritual, for them to seek their spirituality in their home in Israel, but also within their cultural home.
Rav Kook actually says quite specifically that here in Israel we're collectively developing something new that's called, Derech Israel. It's the Israeli way.
Israeli Judaism.
It's not even Israeli. He makes it. Yeah. The Israeli Judaism, and that's the people in Tel Aviv are the prime movers of that in many ways, and it's beautiful, amazing blessings are being brought by their well-being and their actions.
Yeah, and yet I don't think a conversation about spiritual leadership is complete without actually mentioning some of the dangers and some of the risks, because we can't ignore that they're there. That often a person who we put upon them too much. Put them
on a pedestal.
Put them on a pedestal.
Empower them.
Empower them. Too often we see it become an abuse of their power and taking advantage of either vulnerable people or vulnerable situations. And I think that's a real warning sign that we all have to be careful of.
And I agree 100%. And Rav Kook was very explicit about that. The work in our generation is for each person to grow themselves, not to look to someone else to provide them with that. Yeah. We're past that stage. The return to Israel is the return to a living spirit, the spirituality, activity that we're all involved in.
Yeah. I want to pick up on something that Noga said, that, some Israelis, they look to find spirituality in another tradition. There's the joke that if you go to India, you'll find tons of Jews, right? Trying to find peace and a connection, in Buddhism. And why not? The question is in Judaism. And I wanted to put that to you, Rabbi Marmerstein, because there are, many critiques of the official Orthodox leadership in this country, that at times alienates other Jews, women, homosexuals, and this alienates a sense that people, they don't want to turn to a spiritual leader if they're not going to be included, as one of a legitimate part of the community.
It's very true. I think it's a comment about the level of religious leadership that we have now. The true leader of Israel will be the one that brings these together and finds a way to communicate all together and figure out the best way to be for all of us. And we need leaders like that. I mean, Rav Kook's vision is a directive towards that. And I know some people that are on that level, but we need more.
Enough of them. And we have to remember, Israel is, a little more than 70 years old, and it's still developing, but this is an issue that really needs to be addressed.
And I'll just add that our response to that is we've established what we call a Beit Binah in India, a Binah home in India for Israeli travelers and other Jews, that precisely at the period of their lives when they're seeking and they're open to exploration and to learning new things, to have a Jewish answer there, to have something that they can find their own culture in India, and it's actually been very, very, very successful.
Is there a team of rabbis there and you are one of them, or is it the idea that, a kind of democratic, enterprise for Jewish learning without really an established rabbi? This is also a new kind of form of Jewish spirituality.
Absolutely. We have a team of educators, what we call them. We're very careful on having a very diverse group that represent different approaches to theology and different approaches to Jewish life. And we encourage our students to explore and to make decisions on their own. But I think you're absolutely right that for many years, I think the secular Israeli community has been disempowered when it comes to their Jewish identity. And they feel that they have to look outward, outside of the Chiloni, the secular community, for the authority on all matters pertaining to their Jewish life. And I think the process that we're trying to catalyze here in Israel is how do secular Israelis take back ownership, take responsibility, and feel empowered and feel that they can also make decisions about their Jewish life for themselves.
We're in really a period of kind of Jewish exploration here in Israel.
As well.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Noga Bernia, Runner Samia, and Rabbi Barmstein. Thank you so much for joining me. We're going to take a quick break. Don't go anywhere. We have so much more coming up for you here on the Holy Land Uncovered. Stay with us.